The Reverend and the Rabbi, Faith and Eggs. Reverend Bill Crawford, Senior Pastor of Larchmont Avenue Church, and Rabbi Jeff Serkman, Senior Rabbi of Larchmont Temple, are friends and colleagues in our community who get together regularly for breakfast and always lively discussion. Join the Reverend Bill and Rabbi Jeff at their latest meal at the Nautilus Diner. Enjoy a breakfast of faith and eggs with the Reverend and the Rabbi.
Rabbi Jeff.
Reverend Bill, how are you? Oh, be careful now.
Oh, really?
Good to see you.
Good to see you. Good to see you.
On this snowy morning.
You know, here we are.
Snowbound. Is that John Greenwood here? Snowbound? I think it is.
Snowbound, yeah.
I think that's a poem.
Kind of like, I mean, this is kind of like Bing Crosby and White Christmas, you know, where they were all kind of like snowbound in that little hotel.
Yeah, we call it White Hanukkah.
Like,
we call it White Hanukkah.
There we go. I'm dreaming of a white Christmas and Hanukkah. Reverend and the Rabbi coming at you from the Nautilus Diner, downtown Larchmont.
There's going to be a rundown of the top 10.
There we go. There we go. There we go.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm good.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you know, the busyness, the fullness of the season.
Yeah,
this
is
a short
full
answer,
season, right? This is a full season. And it's sort of a progression that goes Christmas and beyond, really.
Christmas and beyond.
And beyond. It's
from
like,
here to infinity.
To infinity.
You know, we got Christmas, we got the eternal. You know, it's kind of like. And that's kind of.
I mean the calendar. I mean the.
No, I hear you. I hear you.
Advent and.
Well, it's kind of like we could go right to the calendars. I mean, here's the Jewish calendar. Here's the Christian calendar. The New Year's for us, you know, on the Christian calendar is the first Sunday in Advent.
Yes.
So we that was the first Sunday in December.
Right.
And so you know, prior to that, we have you know, the counterpart to Simchat Torah.
Yep.
Christ the King Sunday.
Yep.
We conclude the lectionary. You know, all the stuff of Scripture.
So all your scriptural readings,
and here comes a new one. Okay, in December, and then we mark our the steps toward Christmas, and then you know it's season of Epiphany and on into the year and the fullness thereof in a great way.
And does it feel like, I mean, the High Holy Days for us, you build up to it, it's that month of Elul coming up, and there's something wonderfully uniting and affirming and connecting as a community.
Yeah.
Does Christmas have that feel, and should it have that feel?
Well, there is that element in the sense of homecoming.
Right.
You know,
right.
Homecoming, and so I mean, here we come, you know, to the place of the Savior's birth, you know, and the experience thereof. I mean, hope born for us. And so the coming together with that. I mean, there's the sights and the sound. I mean, the faces gathered there at the manger, but you know, the faces all together. So they're coming together and going for it. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Abel,
good to see you.
Good morning to you. Good morning to you.
No, wait. You're not a Yankee fan, are you? Yeah, I know he is because I know that Giancarlo Stanton, who really should not be allowed to be in the New York Yankees, there's something. Unfair would be a kind word.
Oh my goodness!
Something.
Away.
I immediately thought of him when I heard the news. I don't know where I was driving someplace in the car, and I thought, Abel is going to be so happy.
Yeah,
I
am. You see?
I
knew it.
There we go. Is there anything else you want to kind of like?
No, but I was thinking of Abel. I want to order. I'm so hungry.
Yeah. But I mean,
it's like when you have the snow and you have to clean the car off, and you're feeling.
But I mean, only there's a tinge of Boston fan, you know, in that.
A tinge of Boston fan.
In that little.
I'll do a close up on my jacket and my little tweed jacket here, which I dreamed of teaching at Brandeis University. You know, this is when I was a freshman in college. See the B right there on that jacket? Doesn't go away.
There we go.
You can't take it out.
There we go. But the Yankees have Stanton. Listen, and so what's that going to do to the American League East?
I'll trade you one milk and a Dustin Pedroia for some half and half.
Yeah. Here we go. It's a good thing we have a little bit of half and half. Half and half is like mega and mega.
He's going to have.
All right. I would love to have.
2 poached eggs.
No, actually.
No, you're not doing poached eggs.
I was thinking about scrambled eggs.
Oh.
I mean, you know, that's kind of where we started with.
It is.
You know, when the Faith and Eggs
You're coming full circle.
Was scrambbled and omelet.
That's
true.
And
then we took a little shift off the poach. But I would like to have scrambled eggs, Abel, please, and rye toast, home fries.
Okay.
No juice, I'm fine.
Oh, okay.
Okay, great.
You want potatoes, right?
Oh, yes, please.
You got it.
Abel, can I get a lox and cream cheese omelet?
Okay.
No potatoes, no toast. I'll take a few olives.
Okay. Egg whites or red?
No, regular.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Thank you, thank you. So, I mean, like, I think the discerning viewers might recognize that if you've been following our menu over the past couple episodes, the rabbi had made a shift to corned beef.
I did the corned beef
hash,
hash,
and
which
now
I love.
today we're
which I
back.
love.
We're back to the omelet. Okay, news break. The rabbi is back to the omelet, and I heard some olives in that order too. All's right with the world.
All is right with the world. You're right. And boy, what's going on in this world?
Oh, where do we start?
Yeah,
where do we start?
It is, yeah.
I mean, you know, for me, here
What's
comes.
let's share. Let's make this an uplifting show. Let's share what's most distressing in the news to us.
Well, I was going to say, for me, here comes. Much like I know when last we were at this table, you were preparing for High Holy Days, and so here are preparations for both of us as we kind of move ahead into seasons. For me, there's great anticipation for Christmas Eve. The churches across our neighborhood will be having wonderful services on Christmas Eve. At LAC, as Christmas Eve is on a Sunday.
Wow.
So we will have, yes, our regular, as always, you know, Sabbath day in the Christian tradition. That's Sunday
morning.
You know,
Yeah.
Here's Shabbat Friday in the Jewish tradition and teaching. So here comes Sunday morning, Christmas Eve, our 10 o'clock service, and then we have the evening services.
But does that do something special to the Sunday morning service?
Oh yes. I mean, you know, all of that. But in the full tradition of Christmas, Christmas in the tradition in time over time begins at midnight on Christmas Eve, and so therein, when we get to certainly nightfall, there will be the fullness of the celebration anticipation.
And it begins at midnight. Why?
Why? Because that is at the stroke of midnight, the start of the new day, that Christmas day, December 25th.
On which, you know, Jesus was born.
Well,
I mean, hypothetically.
Hypothetically. I
Hypothetically.
mean, you know, the history would indicate, and the story, if as the hymn carol goes, while shepherds watch their flocks by night, all seated on the ground, you know, the angel of the Lord came around and glory shone around. That's a line from the hymn.
Yeah.
You know, that in itself would connote and imply that they were doing so out there in the fields in warmer weather. It wouldn't have been cold.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, likely that, you know, March or, you know, warmish springtime would have been the time.
Right.
What happened when December 25th was established as the date for the celebration of the birth of Christ, it came by way of some of the machinations of the empire, and that would be the Roman Empire. And preceding, you know, the establishment of that date, you know, we have this, you know, interesting, unique, profound point in history when, and you and I have taught on this,
yes.
you know, in various ways, you know, the Constantine experience of his conversion to Christianity, and you know, he saw this image of a cross and said, by this sign I will conquer. And so in the 300s, you know, Common Era, he, you know, became a Christian, and the empire, you know, became Christian by decree in the midst of that. I'll go fast forward a bit, and so here came dates on the calendar, and it was one particular date was noted really as a pagan holiday. Now this may sound a little scandalous, but the holiday was Sol Invictus. You know, the sun will not be conquered, even though
it's the darkest moment of the year.
The darkest moment of the year. And that, of course, as the equinox goes, would be the 21st of December.
Right.
There's this particular, you know, celebration that happened 5 days following that, or thereabouts. So, you know, we get to the 25th, which really reads more like 4 days if you're doing the math. But nonetheless, it was by, some empire decree that became the day, when the church celebrated this birth of Christ. So, historicity, which is a word that you as a professor
yes.
note in terms of any of our treatments of the text, was held in question, but there it was on the calendar. It had been, in the Northlands, yes, in the midst of the dead of winter, here came this day when the longest day then got, with moments following, got to be shorter,
right.
and the sun would make more of an appearance. That is kind of a little bit of the background on the arrival at December 25th. So that day, yes, begins at the stroke of midnight. You've got midnight, and then you got 12:01.
Right.
And so here comes the celebration. In Orthodox churches, nothing of the Christmas celebration happens until that moment. To see all the decorations and all that stuff leading up to December 12th would have been anathema to some of the Orthodox and even strictly religious folks. I won't say the name Christian evangelicals because they have taken another turn in political realm and whatever.
Yes.
And we might not get into that, or we might in today's conversation.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, that's a little bit of the background on December 25th.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow, indeed.
I love the fact that, now Hanukkah, think about Hanukkah.
Yeah, well, and we're into the third night now?
Right, we are going into the third night.
Yeah.
Here's what you should know. Christmas is a wonderful festival about a virgin birth, about the Savior coming into the world, about Jesus's really miraculous appearance and what that means for the Christian world and really for much, if not all, of the world. Hanukkah, I was having to do a wedding after being in Boston for 4 days of my convention this past week.
Yeah,
and my driver had to come, which is great. Victor, who I use whenever I need to get someplace really great, he's very good. And Victor's known me for 21, 22 years. So Victor, said, he said, "Oh wait, Rabbi," he said, "You don't do Christmas?" And I love it because the assumption is, well, everybody must celebrate Christmas. It was this wonderfully naive but gracious assumption. And I said, no. He said, but you have Hanukkah. I said, I want to tell you right now, Hanukkah is no Christmas. Hanukkah is a minor Jewish festival. Minor festival that really started in its original form as the victory of a guerrilla war effort that took about 3 years, that wasn't eventually successful, but that was trying to fight off the Assyrian Greeks who had overtaken the temple. And so that's what Hanukkah is about in Jerusalem and environs around Jerusalem, the hills, Modim. And I said, Hanukkah has really nothing to do with a faith, it's about a human victory, human hands, the underdog overcoming a mighty aggressor and regaining the temple and being able to reinstitute sacrifice. And establishing, so maybe it's a fight for Jewish values, for Jewish practice, etc. The rabbis, years later, meaning centuries later, maybe like the church fathers, crafted Hanukkah and said, well, wait a minute, what about that legend? Why we light the lights of the miracle of Hanukkah? And so lighting the lights and the miracle of Hanukkah and the one little cruse of oil. Now, I'm not paralleling that to the virgin birth in any way. It doesn't parallel. But the miracle of Hanukkah was probably inserted or created or discovered by the rabbis, meaning the rabbis of the early Talmudic period, the very early.
What year would that be?
We're talking about the rabbis of the year 200 of the Common Era.
Uh-huh.
Hanukkah happened almost 400 years before.
Right.
So you're talking about many, many, many generations gone by. And the rabbi said, oh no, the little one jar of oil. So what they were doing is they were trying to say, this is a moment of deep faith when God's presence is with us, because God did miracles for us in days of old, just like God does miracles for us and is a part of our lives today. So there's nothing, that's a wonderful, but it's a minor Jewish festival. So when Victor said, what, you don't do Christmas? I said, no. He said, we have Hanukkah. I said, well, Hanukkah. Hanukkah Shmanukkah.
Was it?
Hanukkah's a wonderful festival.
Hanukkah Shmanukkah is not an incantation that comes up in the Jewish liturgy.
It is.
It's
It is
just
not.
Hanukkah Shmanukkah.
Hanukkah
That's
Shmanukkah.
kind of more of an Adam's,
That would be an Adam Sandler. I'll tell you something.
Sandler.
Yeah, but
that famous SNL piece with him.
Suffice it to say, very different festivals. But what have we done in this day and age, and certainly in the past century plus, because of the place in which we live and the way in which we live? There's been the Jewish Christian ethic. We have connected invariably, and that's what we do.
Yeah, I mean, it's very interesting, and I think we could have a little topic seminar.
You don't have to take my jacket off, do you? Because I'm getting a little.
And by the way,
it's a little.
This is almost like a fashion show because, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, you at home watching, you may want to record this. This is the fashion portion of our program. Rabbi Jeff Serkman is attired in some wonderful professorial garb. I mean, the jacket that he just extricated himself from was complete with the professorial arm patches. Where do you see that? Maybe in the movies with, like...
if I only had a pipe.
Yeah, really.
I so would love to smoke a pipe if I wanted to smoke.
Yeah. So you might want to draw the pipe in, into your, viewing device there. But nonetheless, we've gone from the tweed jacket, a lovely herringbone with the Boston insignia on it, and now have revealed a wonderful window pane plaid shirt that is really quite fashionable and in the season with a blue sweater vest. It's a polo. I mean, so we're working on that insignia. In the meantime, the tie wonderfully complements, draws out the color in the shirt, and joins with the vest in a wonderfully attired way. Rabbi Jeff Serkman, a fashion plate. Let's move on to what section of the program now?
Well, I'd like my dinner, my breakfast plate. But just to get back, because I want to maintain the thread. So the thread is very interesting, and there's everything right about us as human beings today, and as Jews and Christians saying, and Muslims, and you name it, saying this is the darkest moment of our year. Hanukkah happened at Kislev, 25th of Kislev. The truth is, Hanukkah is a belated Sukkot celebration, which really is supposed to happen in the earlier fall. So you see the same calendration, the same calendar questions, are hovering around both of these festivals. But because we celebrate light at the darkest moment of our year, we need light in our lives.
Well, and I think Season of Light is an apt, distinction for this season. I mean, yes, here's Christmas. Yes, here's, Hanukkah. Yes, here's Kwanzaa. There's other traditions that kind of bear witness to light and illumination. Ironically, or not so ironically, certainly in this northern hemisphere, we are doing this in the midst of winter.
Yeah.
So here we go. I think here comes the seminar proposal, and that is what might be, a program or discussion that would address the topic of kind of the misconceptions, and other perceptions of each other's tradition. Some of us, I think in the Christian realm, I know, my beloved son at a younger age, when we would be invited to friends for Hanukkah celebrations, what was rather striking was here's not just the Christmas and Christmas Eve with the presents under the tree, but here was a series of 8 days where there would be some recognition of celebration,
right.
and the family down the street, the Yaverbaums would have us,
great,
and Cole
right.
and Graham were classmates.
Siri, right?
Siri, indeed.
Yeah,
Siri and
yeah.
Eric and Cole and Jace. Just a wonderful family.
Yeah.
And so we were new to the neighborhood and invited to join with them. And here, Graham was all of second grade and kind of putting this together. It's like 8 days. 8 days was he beholding of a series of gifts, Why not us, Dad? Why not us?
Yeah.
And so that's a little bit of the takeaway on this.
Right.
But,
and the irony, of course, is gifts? If you were in Israel, and we'll be heading to Israel on our congregational trip, booked long ago.
Yeah.
We have 82 or 84 folks coming, which is very exciting. In February, in
Thank you
President's
so much,
Week.
Abel.
Thank you so much.
It's a very hot plate,
Thank
too.
you, sir. Thank you, sir.
No cucumbers?
You know what? I just wanted some olives. And by the
You
way,
know-
look at
you
this.
know, this
You
is-
don't get olives like this. You could, by the way, on the street, these are worth probably $6-7.
Yeah.
All right, this is big time.
6, 7. You know, it's kind of like we're having a little olive grove with our omelet here this morning. This is kind of
And the reason is
amazing.
because I'm going to talk about Israel in a minute.
Yeah, well, and you know, we could talk about the Mediterranean, and you know,
I'm going to leave
mean,
these here in case you want to pick on the olives.
You know, really,
'Cause
and
I share with you.
I'm half Greek,
'Cause I love you,
and
brother,
my
man.
my ancestors
Do you-
in the northern hills, you know, up by Volos and Keresia, 300 kilometers up from Athens along the Aegean.
Just a stone's throw from Jerusalem.
Well, in the zone, in the Mediterranean zone,
Yeah.
not a stone throw. I mean,
Well,
you
if you're a
know,
really good pitcher, like if you're an olive pit throw from Jerusalem.
an olive pit throw. That's our director.
Oh,
Mike
I
Charles.
forgot to
Mike
ask for coffee. I was
Oh,
so
yeah,
excited I forgot to ask for
You
coffee.
know, I mean,
Maybe we'll-
can I pour some of mine into your cup?
No,
Can I
you're
say?
not going to do
Okay,
that. No,
okay.
April comes.
But all that is to say, the Carianis family, the Silogistos family, my maternal grandparents, they, up in those northern hills, way beyond Athens, farmed almonds and olives. You know, it's in my blood. It's in my blood.
Yeah, for sure.
Just
for
thought
sure.
I'd say that. Okay. So, oh my goodness,
Oh my goodness.
let us break bread together.
What a joy to break bread with you, my friend.
Here we are.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz, b'tzalel Adonai God, ruler of the universe, who brings forth bread from the earth.
Thanks be to God for the companionship, at the heart of which is Pan, the bread of life.
Pan.
Thanks be to God.
But to have one hearty appetite. That rye bread is just right, isn't it?
You know, it's the staff of life. It's the staff of life. Rye bread. Rye bread, enough said. Here we go. Here we go.
There is Chance the Rapper, and then there is Craw the Rapper.
Crowther. Yeah.
I mean-
yeah. Crowther. We need another better name.
better name.
Crowther rapper. Yeah. Now, for some reason,
Oh,
rappers.
Rev the Rapper. Rev the Rapper.
Rev and the Rebbe. I mean, here we go. Rebbe rap. I mean, we could do a holiday rap. Wouldn't that be cool?
We
on
could, but
LMC-TV?
I'm not a rapper. But you have.
No, you could do.
Yeah, I'm a Jew who can't
you
dance.
Have
Come
a,
on.
No, but you have a lyric, sense about you. Oh my goodness! To listen to your. Do we say homily in the?
You could say
tradition?
homily. You could say homily.
But I mean,
Sure.
when here's an address. Here's. What is said at the Bema. For me, it's a sermon and a
Yes.
homily or a
Yes.
reflection.
Yes, sir.
But I have been in your presence, and you in mine. But I must say, I mean, most recently, we were part of the Interfaith Thanksgiving service at St. Thomas Episcopal Church.
Yes.
Great thanks to Reverend Carol Gatson.
So, yeah,
and
very
Reverend
well
Tammy
done.
Burke.
Beautiful service.
And all of us had some parts in that. And so here's where it's almost like if I could make a real stretch here, a Major League Baseball game where we're watching other folks we've known and admired who take the field.
Saying, boy, that guy can hit.
Yeah. And so it was that we had a chance to hear the rabbi, and you.
The very end of the service.
You and I
guess.
had the kind of the 1-2 benediction in charge there.
Yeah.
We should really circulate your comments, and they were really quite special and profound.
Here's the problem with that. I didn't write them down. Whatever I just said, I was inspired by the moment.
I saw you reach for some notes in your.
Did I have
You
comments? Did I have something written down?
You had some notes, and as did I. But all that is to say that there are some, profound pieces and nuggets in our comments and commentary that could easily make their way into some rap rendition. Truly.
So if
Just a thought.
If
just
you
a
were in
thought.
Israel, as we were, probably 1, 2, 3. So we go every other year, usually in December or in February or March, depending on when the break is from school. So we had 2 busloads of Larchmont Temple folks. We were in Israel at Hanukkah time. What's Hanukkah in Israel? It's that minor festival. You're supposed to publicize the miracle. So you put your Chanukiah, your Hanukkah menorah, literally at the doorstep, or we walk through by the old city, and Larchmont Temple people were just blown away. The Chanukiot, and a lot of them are oil menorahs. So you actually light them with oil. They're at the bottom of the walkway of houses. So you're walking by, and it's almost like, oh my God, Christmas lights. But it was the wildest thing. You don't see a Christmas tree or a Christmas light anywhere except go to Bethlehem and you see this gorgeous, gracious, lovely, right? It was just beautiful. But Hanukkah, gifts? What gifts? Still today in Israel, there's no gifts. You maybe give a little gelt, maybe a little money or something, but there's really no gifts. It's about getting together with family. It's about maybe cooking some latkes. It's about having sufganiyot. What's a sufganiyah? You can get them at Village Square Bagel. I have not tried them. My blood sugar would go crazy. But a sufganiyah is a jelly donut or something else. When I was a much younger guy in Israel for a year between high school and college, I remember being in Haifa for Hanukkah, and they had caramel-filled sufganiyot. So think about a jelly donut stuffed with caramel. You open it, it was hot. I took a bite, and I heard angels singing. I really did. I did. That's how amazing it was. So that to me, so Hanukkah is, so what did we do last night for Hanukkah? It was so beautiful. Sophie, her wonderful boyfriend Tyler, who we love, and I lit the candles. It was a night I didn't have anything at temple. We sang a few songs, we did the special prayer, and then they played dreidel. There were no gifts. There was no exchange. The exchange was love. If that can be Hanukkah, that's what Hanukkah should be for your family. You don't need 8 nights of presents. In my family, which didn't have a whole lot of revenue or resources, I remember getting, as they say, the gloves were one night, and the hat was another night, because that's as much as we could do. And I would get one toy, maybe, And my grandmother would say, "Here," and my Bubby, who lived downstairs from us, would give us a few golds, usually silver dollars. That was a big deal. Hanukkah, simple, gracious, lovely.
Well, if I may, I think, for both of these traditions represented here, and we're not, the quarter of the market, if I may put it that way, on truth, much less, with regard to our particular traditions, not to mention other traditions in this season of light. But I think there's the contention with kind of the culture and the commercialization. It's such that here's the acquisition of stuff and almost in relation to others. I think some of the constructs of our holidays over time have been in reaction to others. When you mentioned
quite clearly
the year 200 in the Common Era, thinking back to my original piece there and comments on the Sol Invictus, that was just about the time when the empire, was considering, okay, what does it do, with, this emergent, Christian belief. And then if you think about Constantine's times, it really was, a little bit later, that here came the faith claim or the action of the empire in its marriage with the religion, Christianity, and then with that to kind of put that in place to contend with any other outcroppings or other faith expressions, will institutionalize it all the more with this holiday on this date.
Right.
Here comes, some of the, the establishment of the Hanukkah, in the midst of that. Now I'm, stepping on some ground that's not my territory here.
You're doing quite well.
But the reaction is quite a dynamic. So that going forward, here, here's Christmas emergent with these gifts that really, in terms of the truth of the story, came by way of, the teaching and the understanding that there were some wise ones, magi from the east, who brought these gifts. Gold, frankincense, and myrrh, each of which had some symbolism to it. And so ever since then, we've been bringing gifts at Christmas, okay? And here is, a gift for the child, essentially. At the Larchmont Avenue Church, we have a Christmas pageant. We will this coming Sunday with all the boys and girls and children of our Sunday school. And the gifts that are brought are really items and articles for homeless folks.
Gifts to give to others.
And so that is.
Make one night of Hanukkah, no kid gets a gift. How about this? You give your kid $20. Give each kid $20. You can handle it. I know. and they go to the grocery store and they get to fill a bag for $20. They can see how far $20 goes, and then you bring it over to Larchmont, Mamaroneck, Hunger Task Force, over at the Cap Center, so that you can give that away. That's a gift to teach your kids how to give. Bake some brownies, bring it over to Sarah Newman, or some other place where maybe older people or old folks convalesce. It would be wonderful to teach our kids that the gifts are the ones we give. The greatest gift.
And here's the temple, here's the church, here's the other temples and churches. We can help you with ways, and routes by which you can do that. You can do that in the season. I'd like to get back to you mentioned the Larchmont Temple trip previously to Jerusalem and Israel, and then upcoming, I guess, in February. For me, my wife, Dr. Julie Parker, led a group of seminarians to Israel, Palestine back in January, the beginning of this year. And we were there in Bethlehem, and I can't help but think, as I look at some of the pictures of recent days, yes, about the scene that you described with the lights in Bethlehem. Indeed, Manger Square, which is just outside the Church of the Nativity, a rather large expanse, probably as big as the Mamaroneck High School football field, in terms of square footage. But in the midst of that, there is a Christmas tree, and I gather, if it's not there year-round, it's certainly up at this season. We were there in January, so it was right there, kind of in the heart of Manger Square. We were there, in the daylight and during the day, with some visits and talks, and then Julie and I ventured out from our hotel, which was just right next to the Church of the Nativity, for a nighttime walk, and it was cold or at least chilly in temperature, but also, quite frankly, in terms of feel on the street.
I'm sure.
I mean, candidly, and we're stepping into, at this point in our discussion, some interesting, territory for us, because, we sit here on December 14th in the aftermath of the declaration, or whatever we call it, from the President of the United States with regard to Jerusalem being the capital. And as I mentioned, the scene in Bethlehem, I mean, here we have, in effect, is occupied territory.
Yeah, it is occupied territory, no question.
And so as we walked out on Manger Square, in the daylight, but also at nighttime, there was an air and a feeling and an intensity, and tension.
I'm sure.
That I can only imagine in this point in time, given some of the geopolitics, is all the more intense.
Heightened this
and
summer,
as pilgrims make that trip to Bethlehem, certainly during these times, there's some critical concern. And so we might want to. We haven't talked about this prior to sitting at this table.
But we love each other and know each other. So here's the reality: Jerusalem is the capital of Israel. It's the ancient sacred capital of the Jewish people. It's also central to other peoples. There's no reason to change the political conversation by suddenly, as my Bubby would say, always quoting Bubby, in Yiddish, mitten drinnen, in the middle of Wednesday, deciding to make a statement. To what end? To what end? Why? Why? To throw a wrench in the works? I mean, it just doesn't make sense. And was Israel, or some Israeli leadership, trying to, tell the president that this was some demand that had to? No, I don't understand. I really don't understand where this comes from, or how. Yes, I do understand politically, but certainly theologically, certainly when you're talking about the establishment of any kind of a potential path towards shalom, peace, where peoples can live with one another, then part of Jerusalem has to be a Palestinian capital too. And it has to, so there have to be room for peoples. Why would you carte blanche say Jerusalem is the capital of the state of Israel, that's the Jewish peoples? Now, of course we have a deep attachment, a long attachment since King David, really established Ir David, the city of David. That's Jerusalem. There's no question. But why negate another people in the process? It doesn't make sense on any level.
And so what's this is Dateline, Nautilus Diner, Faith and Eggs, the Reverend and the Rabbi. Rabbi Jeff, when he mentioned Boston, I don't think, just to draw this out a bit more, your time in Boston within the past 10 days was part of the conference of
the biennial of the Reform movement.
There we go.
You are
there
Jay.
we go. So your friend and colleague, Rabbi Rick Jacobs, who's the president of that organization, and somewhat recently had been the rabbi in nearby White Plains.
Westchester, Scarsdale.
Scarsdale.
Westchester Reform Temple.
And so here we are going forward, noting that action from the president, during the time of that conference. What an awesome moment for you all to be in conference with a couple thousand, 6,000 Reformed Jews. I must say, my Presbyterian denomination, along with Methodists, along with Lutherans, along with Episcopalians, noted their, shall we say, disappointment and objection, to this declaration. You mentioned something just a moment ago. Yes, here's the sense of Jerusalem, its identity. Really, in terms of reaching back, not just 1,600 years, but even prior to that, in terms of, the descendants of Abraham and Abrahamic tradition, such that here is dare I say, a stake, a presence and a place in that place.
There are very ancient Jewish roots, but
Well, and others too. I mean, Christians are kind of latecomers to this, but I mean, here's Islamic and other, well, particularly that tradition. I say that simply because, oh my gosh, and I think if I understood, well, I can talk about our Protestant denomination's responses to this, but if I understood the Reformed tradition, in Judaism response, and it would have been right there on the ground in Boston. While
it was. Rick Jacobs gave he gave a drash on it Saturday morning. I was there.
And so here's the note, that you make about, okay, the recognition of Jerusalem, but other recognitions too. And I think what I understood was, oh my gosh, the understanding that was missing from that in terms of other peoples there. I mean, here you have, a proposed capital in Western Jerusalem, but what about Eastern Jerusalem and, Palestinian presence there, and what about a Palestinian capital? And the timing of that was, what was up with that? Much less, what that did to affect, dare I say, and here's a term that makes me wonder, the peace process. Do we have a peace process?
What it did was it made Israeli security forces. Israel. We can go all the way back to Moshe Dayan, the great defense minister, yes, the guy with the patch on his eye, 6-Day War, before and after, and of course way before, he was, commander of, of the sort of the Southern Front. But Dayan said, the day after the 6-Day War, we don't need these territories, and he didn't call them territories. So, fast forwarding, we understand that these are occupied lands. Yes, there are some settlements that have happened over the course of time, which could be, and they're not. And when you think of a settlement, you think, well, what is a settlement? Is it like a tent settlement? No, they're cities.
No.
They're actual real. Modin is a city. Modin, ironically, the city that's called Modin, which is a settlement, will be part of Israel proper in a negotiated two-state solution because it's an established place where 100,000 Jews or something like that, or I don't know, it's like 80,000 live. I don't know how many it is. I think it's maybe close to 80. I have to check. But it's a major. It's a place where people. But when you declare that West Jerusalem is the capital of Israel, and it should be with the forethought of what political ramifications that will have across the spectrum. And I guess it is no surprise that the standing president of the United States is a little bit insensitive, or how about this, clueless, or even worse, he knew quite well what he was doing. That would be the worst thing.
Well,
That would be the worst thing.
the words that we could roll back the text on this, and this is not a deposition with the Reverend and the Rabbi, but I mean to say, a forethought of political implications. We don't get forethoughts of implications with this president.
No.
I mean,
We get tweets.
here's an element of America First that reads more like me first, and here we have items and even steps toward policy purported in rather distinct ways.
Yeah.
I think it's really quite troublesome, and even as we hear in recent days or hours recently, Hamas declaring that there's no peace process now. I mean there seem to be, and here if we invoke some sense of forethought, if this is a positing of something proposed, if not policy with the capital, then what is the quid pro quo? What is a Palestinian capital in East Jerusalem? I mean, right up the road outside of Jerusalem, how many meters alongside the wall?
And it's
alongside the wall, which is 9 meters high and 550 miles long. Right up the road in Ramallah, we have the Palestinian Authority, which has its own kind of identity, purporting itself. And it's kind of, it reads like on either side of the wall in the territory. And by the way, I'm a lay person here. I just, traveled there to the holy sites on both sides. And it's like, oh my gosh, it feels like encampment and division. And tribal dynamics. In both distinct.
Isn't it interesting that this president put forth a tribal kind of.
And so, gosh, when you talk about forethought for implications in policy, I mean, here's just one item in this, dare I say, presidential agenda, if it's an agenda beyond the tweets, that has, like income tax, like climate, like civil rights and the like education, like healthcare, has implications for the long run, which, if I could quote the Rabbi, was their forethought. Was their forethought. We really are in awesome, interesting times whereby what we're hearing and what's being posited and put in place, if not ratified, hold on to that because I'm not sure we're going to get ratification.
I don't know.
We've got implications for the long haul in terms of the complexion of this country and the world about us.
And just so you
Are we going to talk about sports anytime
in a
soon?
moment? In a moment. Just so you should know, in Israel, previous to this, and for a long time previous to this, there are not just contacts, but there are points of connection between, Arab leaders and people on the team, the leadership team, and Israeli leaders. There are points of connection between Jews, Israeli Jews, and Arabs. I happen to know that Syrian injuries from the north of the Syrian people are there's no longer an outpost where Israel and Israeli hospitals would establish an outpost in Syrian territory in the north, but rather because the Syrian border is right on the Golan. So they actually have an ambulance corps that brings Syrian injured Syrians to Israeli hospitals. But that suffices to say, or that's enough to say that whatever contacts and connections there were, the president's declaration just made it more difficult and infinitely more challenging to try to keep those contacts, to deepen the contacts. So
I don't mean to interrupt, but
Yeah, no,
here I
please.
am interrupting. I mean, the Rabbi cites people in touch across Palestinian Israeli lines, people in touch by way of emergency care, as in ambulance, as in dire medical situations, as in shared efforts that are out of the spectrum, out of the radar, out of the discourse. And by the way, out of any discussions that we know of with Jared Kushner, who seems to be an emissary for this president. We have across Judaism and Christianity as well as Islam, some folks who would not be positing themselves on the extreme spectrum, but who, for such a time as this, to quote the book of Esther, are very concerned, committed, and really hands-on and operational in terms of the discourse and dialogue. What we are missing in this season of light and this geopolitical realm and time right now is, who they are, aside from, these divergencies that are really kind of put in place by
by the discourse, to put it mildly, of a U.S. president
Yeah.
who's really disengaged, even some, previous allies, whether it be the Saudis, whether it be, Palestinians, as well as, even those within Israel other than
Yeah.
Mr. Netanyahu,
Bibi,
who, if I have this right, within 36 hours of that notation about Jerusalem being the capital, Bibi noted a proposal for 6,000 more, units of housing in terms of settlements. Do I have that right?
You may, yes.
That is just horrendous. I mean, there is to the peace process.
Right.
Now, I'm sitting here and I'm tearfully appreciative of our connection.
Yeah.
Because those points of discourse and connection
You have
that
to be able to
mentioned
talk to each other.
are absent.
You have to be able to talk to each other.
We like to say right on him, Mr. Trump, here's Rabbi Jeff Zirkman, here's Reverend Bill Crawford. We know some people, but even aside from them, we are glad to talk and to be emissaries, for and with people on both sides, of the lines, for the sake of community, and in that region. But
For the sake of Jerusalem, how's
that?
that?
There we go. For the peace of Jerusalem.
That's right.
Which will be a word that we invoke.
That's right.
Over this season of life.
That's right.
I am pained.
Clearly, there are many
this.
things. There are many things in the news, and we pray and hope.
Yeah.
But knowing there are so many things going on in the world, and you know what the most distressing thing that I think that is just crazy is I wake up every morning, and this is the last thing I'll bring up because we won't have any more time. Oh, I'd love some coffee. Sure.
Oh, I would love to.
You see,
How much time do we have? We don't often ask. We have 15 minutes. Oh my gosh.
Oh, that's great. That's great.
That's okay.
So I would just say this: I wake up every morning and I wonder. So who's today's sex scandal target?
Yeah.
What's going on? That's so who? And I think about this. How can you allow power and position to so go to your head, that you think you can be unethical and immoral, and I just don't understand where this comes from.
Well, now here, I mean,
I don't get it.
Well, here, my dear friend and colleague, Rabbi Jeff.
Can you explain it to me?
It's a classic issue. I mean, how can you allow power, to do that? Here, we can talk about power, privilege. I mean, is there something that's particular and endemic to the human condition that in so many ways, we could talk about culture, even a culture of patriarchy and men in power, because we're looking at a long list of men that seems to, again, with every waking hour into the new day, we hear a new episode.
Got another one.
In today's New York Times, here it is, December 14th, to read the account, and you mentioned her name, Selma Hayek. I mean, it's what can we say? What are the adjectives? It's distinct, it's lurid, it's without fetters, which she was bound by. That is to say, fetters by which she was, figuratively gagged, and also considering, as she did, her own state and stature in the midst of trying to make it, an actress from Mexico coming and proffering and presenting her film project, which was about an esteemed woman who was an artist in Mexico. She pitched it to various places. Lo and behold, Harvey Weinstein picked it up. And not only that, did notoriously, illicit, egregious things, to beckon her and to advance and to, worse with her. And she talks about that in lurid, distinct ways in today's December 14th, 2017, New York Times. I found myself, looking at that, thinking, okay, I'll read this, but then my stomach turned.
I couldn't read it. I couldn't read it. I couldn't read it.
To think about that. And then, the point and the question you posit is really there. How can, in the face and with the grasp and the status or whatever of power and privilege, and by the way, therein lies some critical problems. When we don't have a women's problem, any more than we have a black problem or a person of color problem. We have, here's a male problem, here's a problem of power and prestige, here's a white problem in terms of sexism and, yes, racism. I think one of the things that's been revealed with the Me Too movement, and here forthcoming ever since the lid was pulled off,
Yep.
largely by Rose McCollum, who had a $100,000 buyout, keep quiet, and she took the lid off that and came forward, and here comes this outpouring of women. Read the most recent cover story and more in the Time magazine. The person of the year collectively are the hashtag
Right.
#MeToo women.
Right.
More on that in a moment, perhaps. But going forward, you know, it is not like it has been. You know, there has been
No.
empowerment and voice.
No.
Selma came forward simply because friends of hers did, and she sat on that for a while. She took the lid off it.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, watch out and let's look and see and listen and witness, you know, what's forthcoming. And then too, what is the reaction of men? You know, what happens now with this culture because of that?
Yeah.
Because it's not going to be in secluded,
Yeah.
spirited under the cloak and cover of power and privilege.
No.
You know,
No.
but you know, here is a voice and a voice coming
Yeah,
forward.
and there's an irony that it's happening with, of course, this president in the White House at this moment in time. And you have to think, just if you take as a prism of this or a microcosm of the response to the Roy Moore, the recent election where Doug Jones was victorious, though I don't think Roy Moore's conceded yet, interestingly.
Yeah, yeah.
And what do you see? You see a president who somehow justified. Now, I can't convict Roy Moore before there's a trial and a process. But what, 7, 8 young underage girls who, you know, this is.
He was banned from the shopping mall in Alabama.
I mean, that's like he's the creep at the shopping mall. My God,
yeah.
You're going to vote in the creep at the shopping mall? Seriously. I love Charles Barkley, who my wife met and became very close to in a store in 40 Minutes in D.C. when I was doing a wedding like 4 or 5 years ago, the Shapiro wedding. Charles Barkley goes and campaigns for Doug Jones, and I only heard one clip. The clip was, "Come on, Alabama, don't be idiots." That's what he said. That was his clip. And I thought, he's saying, please, in Yiddish it would be, have some sechel, have some common sense.
But herein lies, I mean, something that I wondered about, and I think we've got a rather well-informed viewing audience, and here we're kind of looking at the news. I mean, I know I was. I mean, I'm kind of a news junkie, you know, the Bible in one hand, you know, the newspaper in the other, you know, or the handheld device. Karl Barth, the theologian, once said there's a call for people of faith, for Christians, you know, to have the Bible, you know, have the newspaper. Going forward, to look at the news and to hear the news, but to hear your question, what's up with the people? Barkley wonders about Alabamans being idiots. I mean, you know, again, we're quoting Charles. Okay?
Charles Barkley,
None of us said that Alabamans are that here, but here's Charles, who's a native of Alabama. But to listen to to some of the voters in Alabama, when it came to the charges brought forward by the women, there was disbelief. There was even the contention that these women were being paid. That these women were being paid to say that. They were not to be trusted. It was all sort of, you know, and Steve Bannon purported this too. This was the influx of money and outsiders, you know, just to make the case, you know, for their candidate. You know, one of the things that Woody Allen said in the days after Harvey Weinstein was first revealed.
Can't wait for this quote. Go ahead.
Okay, here it comes. I mean, Woody Allen said, you know, he felt sorry, terribly sorry for the women. Okay. And Woody Allen, you know, there's a character there in terms of, did we talk about predation or whatever? But Woody Allen then went on to say that, but it shouldn't turn into a witch hunt, you know, and which is a very interesting phrase, because it's another way of kind of discrediting, discounting, dismissing the charges coming forward. You know, these are women who are not making up stories. And let's assume for a second, even though there has been identified, even from this neighborhood, you know, this Veritas project,
Yeah.
you know, an agent of fake news that posited a woman with a Washington Post reporter who said, you know, that
Right.
Roy Moore impregnated her, and she wanted the Washington Post reporter to nibble on this so that the Washington Post would be revealed as being pro-Doug Jones, whatever. We've got that stuff afoot in the land. And by the way, here on LMC-TV, the Reverend and the Rabbi, Project Veritas is based in Mamaroneck, New York. The Washington Post has revealed this. The New Yorker magazine has revealed this. We're glad to let you know and give you those citations. You know, they have been afoot in the whole machination of fake news. They have been affiliated with Steve Bannon and Breitbart and other outlets that do that. That's what's going on. But back to Woody Allen's comment on the witch hunt, you know, let's assume for a second that there might be X number of women out of 100 who purport something like that Veritas agent, you know, that is, you know, fabrication and not factual. There are so many others, that if we dare or deign call this a witch hunt to go out and get someone, no, quite the contrary. Read Selma Hayek this morning. Basically what we're having is, you know, coming forward, the empowerment of women. You know, the voices being issued and coming forward.
It's the courage, yeah.
A very good friend of our family is pictured in this most recent issue of Time magazine. Her name is Lindsay Reynolds. She worked with my daughter in New Orleans. I'm not outing Lindsay because she is pictured just a couple pages away from Taylor Swift in this most recent Times magazine. Lindsay, like my daughter Mari, was just a young woman, you know, out to find work in New Orleans after working for AmeriCorps. She worked in a restaurant. The restaurant proprietor, John Besh, was inappropriate and worse. And Lindsay basically left that job and went to the emails and websites and basically gathered up a host of women who testified against John Besh. Yep. She was one of the 22, is one of the 22 pictured in Time magazine. Her quote was, "I'm poor, I have no social status, I have no social standing, you know, they have all the power and all the money, but I couldn't be silent."
Right.
Especially when I found out that women who I worked with, who weren't college educated like me, who were cleaning the pots and wiping up the tables and working in this restaurant, suffered the same things as well.
Yeah, and the takeaway for us at a time like this really is that living in this age of reality TV become reality, which is this ironic, you know, like when Steve Bannon and the likes are sources of news, it's as if you know, we're seeing reality TV splash across. What do we take away from this? We take away that every human being is worthy of respect and dignity, and that it is the job collectively of all of us at this season of light to see a spark of love and of divine image in every human being, in every single person. So that if you mistreat any human being, you are tarnishing the image of the Holy One. Simple as that. If you mistreat them, if you know, in any way, misogynistically, in terms of race, in terms of gender, doesn't matter. You are totally not keeping your bargain with the Holy One to make covenant real among all people. Simple as that. Simple as that.
So,
The Eagles. Who are the Eagles?
so the Eagles,
I know who the Eagles are. A great group, right?
the prophet Isaiah invoked the eagles in several chapters. I mean, 40 comes to mind. You shall rise up with wings like eagles. You shall walk and not be weary. You shall run and not be faint. And go forth in the grace of God.
Grace of God, yeah.
Maybe that could be our blessing and benediction as we conclude here today. But the Eagles are the best team in the National Football League. And for anybody who happens to be an Eagles fan or in any way related to Philadelphia, solidarity, cheers.
What a depressing loss, the Patriots. They lose to Miami.
Yeah.
They lose to Miami. And
there's a subject change right away.
yeah,
I mean,
I'll
it's
tell you
kinda
right now.
hard
And
to
you know
accept,
what?
Hard
You
to
know,
accept the fact
I
that
guess
the Eagles
I guess
are
thing
doing
most upsetting. You know, the third most upsetting thing would be that the Patriots would lose to Miami in the world. Yeah, I mean, how would that? And that the Eagles. But what happened? But Carson Wentz.
It's a little, but you know, we
Who's the backup? I don't even know. I'm sorry to say.
The Ken Foles. I mean, he's starting this coming Sunday, and you know, the Eagles will continue to soar. That's my prediction.
The Eagles will continue to soar.
Yeah.
You put that in a T-shirt,
Yeah.
big time.
There we go.
Big time.
Well, here we are. I mean, you know, a blessed Hanukkah. What would be the greeting that you know we?
You know
would
what?
say?
It would be Chanukah Sameach, which is the Happy Hanukkah.
Hanukkah Sameach.
You know, or Chag Urim, you know, the Festival of Light. But it's not a Chag; it's a minor festival. You can say Happy Hanukkah. Happy Hanukkah. Have a Happy
But
Hanukkah,
it's not a ho hum Happy Hanukkah.
my friend.
Not a ho hum Happy Hanukkah and Merry Christmas.
Have a
Merry
joyous Merry Christmas to you, my friend.
God bless
so
you.
wonderful.
God
Love
bless
you.
you.
Love
And
you,
Happy
brother.
New Year. Happy holidays to everyone out there, and we'll see you in the new year.